Hi.
Hello. Happy Sunday.
We aren't having
We're
any
having some technical
difficulty at all.
difficulties today. I mean, everything's perfect in the
Should be fine from
background.
here.
Oh my
Pretty
goodness.
sure.
Let's start again. Ready? Hello.
Hi.
And welcome to Wolf
Happy
Mountain.
Sunday.
This is Church on Wolf Mountain. We're your hosts. I'm Sid.
I'm Melanie.
Nice to have you. How is everybody? Oh my goodness.
Oh, thanks for
Oh,
letting me know.
thanks. We worked hard on that intro.
Sid has skills.
Not really. We just went out in the desert and acted like kooks and then came back and had fun with it. But welcome to Wolf Mountain. For those of you who are new, this is your alternative Sunday spiritual community church service, whatever you want to call it. I'm Sid. This is Melanie. For those of you who are new, Melanie is our resident Enneagram coach, certified Enneagram specialist, and she helps us all get along. We do a little Enneagram talk from 7 to 7:30.
Or you know, like 7:05.
What did
Some
I
days.
say?
You said 7 to 7:30, but today we're just
Oh,
a little
7:05,
delayed.
right, yeah. That's good with me.
Sorry, derailed.
I'm just collecting myself. And then from 7:30 to 8, we do a little spiritual intelligence, and I discuss whatever I feel is on the radar. Yeah, so here we are. Welcome. How's everybody doing? Everybody doing all right? Enjoying the forest fires outside? I think I smoked a pack of pine trees last week.
Poor
a
air
day.
quality.
Yeah. It's getting better though. Actually, today is pretty smoky, but it's the annual burning of the West Coast, unfortunately, for the last 5 years. But yeah, so I'm going to adjust the camera a little bit here. Everybody hang on. Take your nausea medication. There we go. We kind of like kicked the camera and had to reboot the thing all when we started. So we are here and we are live and it is good. We also, for heads up, we have Wolf Mountain on our YouTube channel now. We have a specific Wolf Mountain YouTube channel. You can just type in Wolf Mountain for those of you trying to stay off Facebook. And the stream, unfortunately, from our house is a little shaky sometimes. I don't know if it's us or so many people on Zooms or whatever, but it's usually way clearer on the playback. So you can go check that out if we're too pixelated. And we encourage comments, feedback, questions, all the above. So
Insults, yelling.
you can insult us if you like. Just don't give me that meanie face. A lot of people accidentally.
Angry face.
Yeah, you can give me that. It just really distracts me. It's funny. I don't know how people
What
do
did I
it.
say?
It's a lot of easily distracted. So anyway, let's start out with your favorite thing ever of the week. What was your favorite thing ever of the week?
Okay, so my favorite thing ever of the week, you guys might have seen this little video. It was so cute. Was a man who his security camera showed his little 3-year-old neighbor boy.
Oh, yeah.
Just kept riding his little trike in his driveway. And so he, with chalk, made a racetrack for his neighbor in his driveway. And
Every night?
Yes, and
And
kept like
changed it.
improving it, making it better, and with cool turns. And it was just so sweet. I just like to remember how much goodness is out there. So,
I think I
good
posted it on
job,
my Facebook
neighbor.
page.
You did. That was the first piece
Yeah.
I saw, and then I saw several
That's
people
cool.
share it. It was sweet.
Cool. What was my favorite thing ever of the week? I don't know. I just got to go kiteboarding this
It's a
week.
good thing.
It was good. And I can still bust a nice back roll off a wave. I actually did a double and like crashed my kite, but it wasn't a big heavy surf day, so it was no big deal. And I didn't lose my board this time. Last time I was out there doing tricks, I lost my kiteboard, but somebody actually found it and gave it back to me, so that's cool. All right, well, Enneagram coach Mel,
Yeah.
what do you got for us this week? I'm going to take over on the
Okay.
comments.
And we can actually see the comments up there.
Yeah.
So yay.
So, if you guys got questions or comments, since we're doing this on our phone, I have to use the other phone to read them. So,
Double techno.
yeah, and I don't know what our little streamy thing's doing. Oh, cool, we got little wolves and hearts. Good.
Yes. But the hearts are a different color.
On Facebook.
Yeah,
That's
that's funny.
interesting. Cool. All right.
Okay, so
What are we
two
talking about
parts.
this week?
2 parts, silly and serious. So our silly is best food for each Enneagram type.
Oh, are we
And
going to do that? Okay.
Let's do it. Yes. And our serious is defense mechanisms for each type.
So, we're going to do the silly first.
Silly first.
So, Enneagram types. If you know your Enneagram type, pop it up there. We're going to do the appropriate food for each Enneagram type.
Yes. And keep in mind, this is all in good fun.
It's very
not,
scientific and serious.
It's not the least bit scientific, but there might be nuggets of truth in there and just for fun. Okay, so starting with type 1, the reformer. And they...
Type 1 is a reformer.
Yes.
What is a reformer food?
Well, we talked about one, but I think I thought of a better one.
Oh,
so
okay.
My dear sister is a type 1, and she makes this cake. It is I think it's 14 layers. It's like I can't remember what nationality, Hungarian or something, honey cake. And it takes all day. It's like each layer is like teeny tiny. It takes tons of steps. You have to be so precise. It is just super labor intensive.
So number 1's food is 17-layer honey cake?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It takes a ton of precision.
Hungarian
and effort,
17-layer honey cake.
And like every step has to be just right. And it turns out amazing. So it's worth the investment.
All
Well, I don't think it is, but they do.
I can't even eat
I'm never
it,
making
so
that.
I'm just angry and bitter about it.
Okay, type 2, the helper. So we decided that type 2's food is a casserole because they just want to bring something they can share and make people feel better. Comfort food.
So they show up at a lot of potlucks.
And it's delicious and it has cheese. Unless you are lactose intolerant, then it does not have cheese.
I can't eat that
either. And they
either.
will know.
Curse you, universe.
They will know what you need.
I can't eat casserole or 17-layer honey cakes.
No.
All right.
This one you can have. So type 3, the performer, the achiever. How come I can't think of it? So I think it would be a beautifully presented sushi dinner. Very good.
It's very 3, yes.
Yes, presentation matters and just made perfectly, very creative and beautiful presentation. And that sounds so good. I've been wanting sushi.
Sushi. Marlene is a 3. Marlene, you are
What do you
sushi.
think of sushi, Marlena? Do you like
Is that ring true to you? Do you even like sushi?
It's not for everyone,
I think she
but
does.
it is for us.
All right, and the best
The
food.
best food for the best type 4, are individualities. Sid suggests red wine and dark chocolate.
Yes.
It's complicated.
You got to understand it. It's moody.
Deep. It might make you cry a little bit.
Brings out your emotions.
Yes.
I like it.
Type 5, the investigator. It doesn't matter. It can be MREs. It's calories.
It's calories.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be.
They want all the macros. That's it.
My favorite type 5 meal I've seen consumed was cereal with carrots on it.
Yeah.
Because
It's a friend of ours. We're like, what are you doing?
it's just calories. It
Eating
doesn't
cereal and they
matter.
put carrots on it because you just
I
need
need some
calories.
veggies.
That is very 5, yes.
Awesome. Type 6, they're loyalists. So I think a big pizza, getting input from everybody so that everybody has something to share. So
Yeah.
6 is take care of the people.
Can't eat that either.
You can have it for mod pizza, so it can be dairy and gluten-free.
All right.
And
Number
type
7.
7 enthusiast, of course, it's cake.
Cake and vodka.
And maybe vodka. Yeah. Love it.
Is
It's
vodka
fine.
7 drinks? I don't know. You seem more like a wine cooler kind of people. White Claw,
coolers
whatever.
exist.
I don't know. There's big
Sorry,
size.
7s. That seems like a
White Claws to be wine coolers. And when we were in high school, folks at Seagram's, whatever, disgusting.
I don't know. It tasted like juice.
Not that we drank in high school.
Type 8, the challenger. Probably a good
Jill.
rare.
Jill, do
steak.
you like cake and vodka? Stupid. Oh, she's applauding. Yes. All right.
Okay.
Nice. Okay.
Okay.
8.
Steak.
8 to steak.
Steak.
Yeah.
I have a friend who is an 8 who doesn't like steak, so
It's more of a metaphor.
she can have something else.
For like they're just going
'Cause they're
to
just
chunk
gonna
all
have
your
whatever.
food with steak. Yeah.
Yes. And type 9, the peacemaker. They're going to just eat whatever everyone else is having. Just don't ask them to choose.
Yeah. Don't ask them where to go eat. 9s are the worst to ask where to go eat. Where do you want to eat?
I don't know. Where
They
do you
really,
wanna go?
they really have some place in mind. They just don't want to tell you.
Where I just want to always go is just Cafe M.
It's true.
That's all I need.
know she's going to say that.
If only they stay open 24/7.
Well, right on. That was
Okay,
very.
that was the
That was very
quick and
useful.
dirty silly.
Thank you for a very useful scientific
Yes. If everyone can
list of
take that
foods
home and
correlating to
use it
Enneagram.
in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Now we're moving on to big words.
This is the serious part.
Okay. So we're talking about defense mechanisms. So this is going to talk about anxiety.
I'm very anxious about talking about anxiety. I'm anxious about this light. There, that's better.
So defense mechanisms kind of go along with that because when we do experience fear and anxiety and disruptions in our lives, each type has a specific defense mechanism that they employ. So it's really helpful to understand what our own defense mechanisms are, what we're doing and why, and then also our loved ones, what they're doing and why. So you can see when they're exhibiting those behaviors that they are in a stressed
Defense posture.
state. And so,
like a cat back in the corner.
yes.
Don't kick them. I've learned that.
They will
Attack you.
attack. Yes.
All right.
So
What is
we'll
number
start back at the
ones?
top. Ones, reformers. So, and these are some terms that you probably haven't heard before. So the defense mechanism for type 1s is reaction formation.
Reaction
What
formation.
does that mean?
What does reaction formation
Yes.
mean? Any
So-
ones out there?
Yeah, so ones have high standards and principles, and keeping their emotions in check is very important for type 1s. So they don't ever want to display an emotion that they see as negative or inappropriate. So they counter with the opposite. So they
So the fake smilers are ones.
they might do that.
When you can tell
yes.
someone's smiling but they're really angry.
Yeah, an example would be if they see someone doing something or achieving something that they're jealous about, they realize that envy, that jealousy is not an appropriate emotion or response to that. So instead, they'll be super encouraging and supportive.
Yeah.
So
Diabolical. That sounds like cognitive dissonance to me.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much all of these have an element of cognitive dissonance.
Good to know.
Yeah, so these defense mechanisms, it's good to recognize them because all of them have an element of unhealthiness in them, that there are other ways, like to recognize our own, emotions and deal with them better than denying them.
I like
in this
it.
case.
All right, number 2.
Okay. Type 2 are helpers.
Helpers.
So their defense mechanism is repression. So they tend to deny their own needs, their own wishes and desires. They focus outward on everyone else. They actually can find it painful to acknowledge their own feelings and needs and desires. So they just repress it and push it down and pretend like it's not even there. And of course, then that builds and builds and builds.
And they explode.
And they experience sometimes resentment when, it might look like an explosion, but they'll have resentment because their needs aren't being met, because we all have needs, whether we acknowledge them or not. And when they don't get met, then the 2 has hurt feelings and feels resentful. So 2s, repression.
Repression.
Yeah, so it's okay to acknowledge your needs. It's healthy. It's good for you, 2s. Okay.
Cool. Any 2s out there? No, we hit targets.
Bullseye.
All right.
Okay.
Number 3.
Type 3, the achiever. So the achiever's defense mechanism is identification. So 3s try to become an idealized version of themselves. They try to become whatever looks the most successful image that they can think of. So that's like their shape-shifting chameleon tendency. So they will just try to be whatever they think they're supposed to be. And that's like trying to be admired is a substitute for what they really long for is being loved for who they are, not for their achievements. So
Interesting.
it's okay. You can be real, 3s. We love you for you.
We see you anyway.
We see you. We love you.
Interesting. Number 4.
4, and this
Our
one
defense mechanism is
is Kung Fu.
Kung Fu.
No,
I did not expect that.
No, it is not.
Okay.
This was a word I'd never heard before I started studying this too. It is introjection.
Introjection.
Yes, and I think force defense
I
mechanism,
think my car has introjection.
I think so, is so interesting and counterintuitive. So what fours tend to do is they like really absorb hurtful stuff. So I've described it before as fours can luxuriate in their pain. They
Kinda
don't
true.
deny it, they don't reject it, they don't avoid it, they
Feel the
internalize
feels.
it.
You have to feel the feels.
Yes, and sometimes they do this so much, and can even like heighten it, like make it worse, like use their imagination to intensify those feelings and end up making it worse, and like imagining all kinds of intentions from people that aren't real, and they can have trouble distinguishing in their own minds even reality from their imagination. So it ends up being kind of a
can see that.
harmful defense mechanism because it ends up causing more pain.
I might resemble that remark.
Yes. So that was a helpful one for me to learn to kind of understand what was going on over here. Yes.
I saw that shirt today on somebody. It said, "Feel all the feels." I'm like, I need that.
You do need it.
All right, number 5.
Because fours don't feel their feelings; they are their
We
feelings.
are the feelings. Why did I pick anger? I have no idea.
Love.
Love. I am
Think
love.
love,
Yes.
yes. That's
all.
better.
All right.
Okay, type 5 are investigator. So their defense mechanism is isolation. So in all kinds of different ways, so physically isolating themselves from others, and also compartmentalizing. So keeping, their life really segmented and kind of keeping the people in this part of their life separate from the people in this other part of their lives. And of course, while that helps them to ration their energy, it does also separate them from relationships. So in that way, it's damaging. Okay. All right. Okay, type 6, the loyalist. And I think this one is really interesting too. So their defense mechanism is projection. So projection is, you guys might be familiar with this term. So I'm going to read this because it's really good. It's when a person unconsciously attributes their own unwanted and unacceptable thoughts, feelings, motives, characteristics, and behaviors onto others. So you guys can probably see that happening a lot in the world right now, and this increases with anxiety. So it's assigning motivations and characteristics to other people and other groups of people to be able to deny you're having your own issues and making it someone else's issue. So the more that the 6 projects, the more they create a false reality. And of course, it causes conflict because nobody wants motives put on them that aren't their actual motives. So this, again, is not a very helpful defense mechanism.
Excuse our dog whining.
Rossi's projecting.
He's projecting.
You can get up here. That's on the couch. But I'm not sure you can make it.
He'll go.
Okay. Type 7 are enthusiasts.
Type 7.
Yeah. So their defense mechanism is rationalization. So nobody gets out of trouble better than a 7. So when they do something wrong or inappropriate, they have a way of spinning it to making it sound fun, or they're so cute and so happy and how can you even be mad at them? And they justify it in some way that they don't have to really deal with any guilt.
I have observed this.
But it's so cute, it's hard to get
I
mad.
love 7s.
But
7s
obviously
are like
this can cause conflict too.
Yeah,
Not
got
taking
7s out there.
responsibility for stuff.
Any 7s out there, we should hang out. They're like the counterbalance to my scale.
Yes, emotionally.
Yep.
Yes. Okay.
All right.
Then
On to 8.
type 8, the challenger. So their defense mechanism is kind of counterintuitive. It is denial. And at first I'm like, really? Because 8's like, they face stuff head on, but they're not denying that there is a problem. They're denying that they have any vulnerability. So they deny all their own weaknesses and vulnerability and just bulldoze over it. And I thought this was an interesting element to it too. That they don't want to dwell on unpleasant things. So type 8s may deny that they were hurtful or insensitive to others because they've not allowed themselves to remember or recognize that it occurred. So they don't want to, and they don't want to take the time to like sit with that and deal with responsibility for having caused hurt. So they're just moving ahead. So and they're forward looking. They're just rolling ahead. So it's hard for an 8 to recognize sometimes when they've caused hurt. So that's part of the denial mechanism.
Interesting.
Yes.
And
And
last but
our
not
last
least.
one. Oh, I'm moving ahead quickly, so I'll leave extra time at the end.
Yeah.
Okay, type 9, the peacemaker. So that defense mechanism is narcotization. How's that for a word?
Narcotization. All these new words that we're getting
yes,
tonight.
big words tonight. And dissociation. So narcotization can be,
Falling asleep randomly.
that's narcolepsy.
Oh.
That's a medical issue. But narcotization can be from alcohol or drugs, or it could be just like zoning out on a movie or social
I've
media.
witnessed this
Yes.
as well.
And dissociation is like tuning things out, zoning out. Because nines desire peace so much, sometimes their brains won't even let them go there when something's really stressful. I've noticed that in myself, becoming more aware of it when I know something's coming up that is going to involve conflict that I don't want to have to do, like something at work, and like my brain its first impulse is just like nope. It's like it won't even, for a little bit, won't even let me entertain the thought. It like tries to distract me or just like goes kind of blank.
Interesting.
Which is very unhelpful. So, and nines can tend to distract themselves with things like TV and movies and stuff, and also just in routine, and can get pretty testy if their comforting routine gets disturbed. So be aware.
You should never slap the cell phone out of their
wrath
hand.
of a night. No, it really is irritating.
I would never do that. But I'm
No, but
saying
if it ever did happen, I wouldn't.
Never smack the
wouldn't
cell
like it.
phone out of a nine's hand to get their attention.
No.
If they're playing solitaire.
Yeah. Sometimes. So that's one of my narcotizing
Or watching
things.
The Office.
Yes, sometimes I need like Parks and Rec. I need a show I've already seen that's comforting, or I need to like, one of my favorites is to listen to a podcast while playing solitaire or doing a jigsaw puzzle, like listening to something like smart and interesting while doing something with my hands.
So when you're doing that, I should be like, what are you avoiding?
And I won't be able to tell you because I don't know.
She doesn't know.
Sometimes I know. Sometimes I really don't know. Sometimes I just need
a break.
I need my
Mental
peace.
break.
I need my peace back. So anyway, so that is a quick run through in defense mechanisms. We all have them, and some of us may have adopted others that aren't our own type. Also, we could use multiples. I could see that projection one happening a lot, like with politics ramping up and getting really intense, like crazy projecting.
I don't know what you're talking about. We're like us all at peace.
I wish.
Unified.
Happy 9 paradise.
That's cool.
Okay.
Was that ring true to anybody out there? That's pretty interesting stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. We can see the comments
Oh,
now.
yeah.
I'm so excited about that.
Okay.
Look down
Crazy
on that.
you, Amber. Aw, you sweet 4. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to turn it over to Sid and see what goodness he has in store for
Well,
us.
since we can see the comments up there, you don't really need to look at that.
No, but if I want to comment to other people, I'll just be texting over
There you
here.
go.
Don't mind me.
All right, let's take a break. Commercial break.
Yeah. Who's our sponsor?
Tonight was sponsored by Ducati. Always.
Oh, and this lovely sentiment. Can you read it? Oh, yeah. Find your tribe. Love them hard. I think
Really noticed that
that's
on
great advice.
this streaming app, everything's mirrored like it should be. So if you like
But
try
you
to
can
fix
read
your hair,
words on
you
it. It's
push it
not
the
backwards.
opposite way.
My hand is on
It's
center
really
of my
funny.
head.
I'm like, what is going on? Every time I move the camera, it goes the opposite way on the screen. It's pretty funny.
Yes.
All right, that was not useful information, but well, thanks, babe. So I guess the question is, how can people recognize when they are falling into that? What did you call those?
Defense mechanisms.
Defense mechanism.
Well, I think that's the first step, is knowing what they are. And Enneagram teachers will tell you that in your personal growth journey, I mean, that's the first step, is like recognizing when you're falling into patterns, especially unhealthy patterns. So recognizing what you're doing to cope is really healthy, because I think there are elements of each of those defense mechanisms that are good, but there are also elements that are harmful. So just to not let it get too far.
It's really about knowing yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Because
Knowing
sometimes we
yourself.
can be pretty unself-aware of what we're doing.
Yep, we can just be on autopilot and doing damage as we go to ourselves and others and not mean to. So there's a lot we can do once we're aware of our own behaviors.
Yeah. And why I like this is, like, I always come back to the scripture in the Bible that says a man without self-control is like a city without walls. And that analogy means that anything can come and go. Back then, they fortified cities with walls, and if we don't have any self-control, it's like we are just swayed by myriad things, including our own tendencies.
Yeah,
when we're
because we can be
triggered.
our own worst enemy sometimes.
Yes. Especially when we're broken.
Yeah.
Or we have anxiety,
Which
we're going to talk about now.
Totally
Don't
does.
be anxious. We're going to talk about anxiety. It's nice to see you, Stephanie.
Thanks.
Okay, well, that was great. Thanks, babe.
My pleasure.
All right. Well, here we are again. Part two. For those of you just tuning in. Funny. I often hear, like, when I'm in my meditation time, reading the Word, or just like I'll get a download. Sometimes it seems pretty obvious to me, so I don't like post it. But it's really a word for the people. I get that kind of corporate word a lot lately, and this morning, yesterday, I felt like Holy Spirit was really reminding me of something, and I kind of wrote a little thing about it. I'm like, I didn't post it. That's so obvious. And then literally, like, I get online and like a couple other respected like prophetic people I know posted like the same thing. And so it is the current news feed coming down from the heavenlies that I'm about to share with you. So what I was strongly reminded of, and why this is related to anxiety is, like, I think everybody's trying to like sort through all the information out there. No one knows like what's conspiracy, what's real, what's fake news. Like, is it like literally Russia and China, which have admitted to spreading false propaganda to and this is what irritates me so bad. I really get irritated when I get triggered and act and spend energy on stuff that isn't true. And like Russia and China both, they fabricate news just to cause division in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
And so they'll fabricate these crazy things and throw them out there on social media, and like they'll admit it. Like they just did that to. I think the last thing I heard about was the burning Bibles in Portland. That actually didn't happen. It was one person burned the Bible. They repackaged it, threw it back out just to freak us out.
Yeah.
And cause civil dissension. So I hate that kind of stuff. So for me, there's kind of like, I think I'm always trying to like what side do you jump on? What thing do you fight for? Whose team are you on? Like, those people have some good things to say. Those people have some good things to say. And it can create some kind of anxiety, right? So we all want to be on the right side, right? Fighting for the right cause.
Mm-hmm.
I heard an interesting quote, and I love it. It was by a former FBI agent. She said, "Everybody thinks they are the good guy." I thought that was pretty profound. Like, yeah. I don't know anybody who thinks they're the villain in their own story. But anyway, so I was reminded of a story yesterday of when Joshua, it's a character in the Old Testament, and he was going to lay siege to a city called Jericho. And it was familiar with that story. It's the Israelites wandered in the desert for a while after they came out of slavery because they grumbled and didn't believe what God was saying. And he's like, fine. He was so irritated. He's like, you guys will wander around out there in the desert for a while, but he promised their kids after 40 years would make it inherit the land that he told them they would inherit. And it was all his plan to facilitate Jesus hitting the scene and redeeming us all. But Joshua was the main player in this story, and he was leading Israel. And so they're heading up to Jericho. And as the Israelites, the heroes of the Old Testament, were heading up to Jericho, it says that he looked up. I'm just going to read from my notes. He looked up and saw a man with a sword drawn standing in front of him. And he looked at him and said, "Are you for us or for our enemies?" And he said, "Neither. I'm the angel I'm the commander of the angel armies of God, and I have come. Because there was stuff going on in the heavenlies that Joshua didn't see. There was God's battle on top of man's battle, working things out in the background. And I always think that is super interesting. I love that because he asks, like, are you for us or for my enemies? And he's like, I'm not for either one of you. I'm like the commander of God's army, the winning team. Like, we have something different going on. You know, we don't jump on man's like Republicans versus Democrats and this and that. You know, it's like that. You know, I think that when we got to realize that. Well, first, I actually want to talk about this. So after he said that to Joshua fell down on his knees in reverence to this angel. And some people speculate that might have actually been a manifestation of Jesus for one of the times in the Old Testament where God actually showed up. And some people, it's not uncommon in the Old Testament for an angel to show up that's commanding armies of other angels. But I love that man, the commander, said, take off your shoes, for this is holy ground. That's the second time you see that in the Bible. And I used to think that was like, whoa, okay, yeah, out of respect, I need to take off my shoes. And that's interesting. Like, why would you take off your shoes to have your bare feet touch the ground if it's holy ground? It's because on an energetic level, your feet actually, you've heard the grounding out to the land. It's when you connect to the earth energetically, and it like neutralizes your ions. It's like I always take it as like he's allowing man to ground out to the atmosphere of heaven, the holiness right there. So it's like, take off your feet. I want you to partake in this holy ground with me. It's going to absorb. Take off your shoes, not your feet. That would be really disturbing. Take off your shoes and stand on this holy ground. I want you to partake of this environment with your bare skin, touching it. I think that that's pretty fascinating. But I love that scripture because, you know, it's like, I always want to be on the side of truth and justice and righteousness and establish the kingdom of heaven on this earth, undo the deeds of darkness. And it's like, I think a lot of times, you know, people of faith, they start out on this path of having their own crusade. Like this is the side of righteousness and we're going to make it happen. And, you know, if you want to be on the winning team though, you know, you do what God's doing. Otherwise you're building your own kingdom, you know, and you're going to lose eventually. It's like your kingdom is temporary and imperfect, and God's kingdom is perfect and lasts forever. And we need to, you know, jump on that bandwagon because God doesn't lose, and it's going to happen, you know. And so cutting out the anxiety for me has always been like, all right, I need to know what God's doing so I can do that, you know. And what is God doing? It always starts out with the foundation of loving our neighbor as ourselves. You know, you start from there and everything radiates out from there. And so I just threw that in there. For one, I think it's the word of the Lord to the earth right now. Is God's for humanity. He's not on your side. He's not on your enemy's side. And if we want to be on the winning side, we do what he's doing. And that starts with loving our brothers and sisters, loving our neighbor as ourselves. And we need to fight for righteousness and justice. But that, to me, then makes me turn this way. I'm like, what are you doing? Which brings me to the big trust thing. So then then we get to that place. We have to go back to that place of trust. Like, we have to trust that God is working out everything for our good, and that when we are resting in him, grounded in him, eyes turned up, pulling from that higher realm into this one, leaning our understanding to know what he's doing the things that Jesus said we need to do, to model what he did. We trust that when we do that God's automatically going to take care of us. Which brings me then around to the anxiety thing, because it is a lot of anxiety flying around right now. And I think a lot of it flies around people just not knowing what's true and not knowing what's going on, and the whole lack of trust. And is this big conspiracy? Are the aliens coming next? What's going to happen? Godzilla's coming out of the sea? I don't know. And
don't start any new ones.
I think Godzilla should come out of the sea. That would be way more exciting. Give us something to run from. You want something to run from? Godzilla. He's got it there. You want something to cry about?
Oh no.
Godzilla's real. Deal with it.
No.
That'd be awesome.
That's not in the Bible.
All right. It's not. Now I'm amused by that. I'm stuck. So I actually had a request to talk about anxiety last week. And I have a long history with learning how to manage anxiety in my life for various reasons. And we can't really cover it all today, but I wanted to kind of start the conversation and just talk about it as far as I could and see if we can like pick it up next week and finish the conversation. Because anxiety is really having its day right now. There's so many people right now saying they're, experiencing anxiety. They can't sleep at night. They're stressed out, worried about the future. People putting their kids on drugs. They're taking drugs to calm themselves down, which is a Band-Aid.
Like marijuana sales are up.
Marijuana sales are up and alcohol.
Wine sales are up.
And, I do my things when I'm anxious, and not marijuana and alcohol.
Other things.
Other
coping
things.
mechanisms.
Usually requires going really fast. So I want to share a little bit about anxiety and my journey with it. But first, I want to really talk about how anxiety is like a multifaceted issue. There's so many contributors to why somebody might be experiencing anxiety. And it can be environmental, it can be physical, it can be mental, it can be spiritual. You better believe it can be your spiritual. And so I want to address some of those things. Like I've had experiences with all of these things. And so I'll give you a little backstory on myself is when I was a kid, I mean, just to so you can kind of get an idea where I'm coming from. When I was a kid, came from a broken home. My mom wasn't super stable. She had her own issues. And we moved 21 times by the time I was 19. And so never knew where I was going to end up. Never knew what was going to happen when we moved, where we were going to be, new school, new house. And, me being I'm going to call it SSP from now on, spiritually sensitive person, to encompass all of the things. Me being an SSP, we'd move into a new house, school, neighborhood, and I'd pick up on all the things. Like I had seen things that no kid should have to see. And from an early age, which caused, my earliest memories is seeing some things that was broke my brain. It wasn't a dream, wasn't a hallucination. And so I had anxiety for all kinds of reasons. Because every time we moved, things got worse. So in my life, when I was younger, not being parented very traditionally. I don't know if there's I'm trying to be gentle.
That's a nice way to say it.
Being left to my own devices as a child, with all these things going on.
Free range parenting.
Yes. It's like every time something changed, for me, it meant things were going to get worse. I was going to be in a new school with new kids, trying to learn something new and catch up. And a lot of critical people in my life. Adults were a little crazy for me. I had some adults do crazy stuff to me when I was a kid. Not like sexual abuse, but just other ways to be. I got abused when I was younger. And being spiritually sensitive on top of that, it was like I was a wreck all the time because I never knew what I was going to get into next. But if anything changed, it was usually going to be for the worse. And it progressively did get worse until, my later years of high school. And so that would be that's a multifaceted recipe for anxiety. You've got a lot of layers there. And so by the time I hit my 20s, I had PTSD from things I'd experienced. I had tons of anxiety, and I was always running on fight or flight mode all the time. Didn't realize it, but in the background, I was always on edge, right? And so I have experienced it. So I've got a long history of it. But I want to talk about the different categories I really feel like anxiety can come from, and what it really takes to get a hold of yourself if you're experiencing these things. So, I think that people get used to living with anxiety or living with some kind of mental or emotional trauma, and it just becomes normal to them. So they don't realize that it's not for them. It's like, pain tells us something. If we're burning our hand, it's telling us something's wrong, right? We've got a pain in our knee, something's wrong. Skin has a rash, skin breaks out. There's something wrong internally, because that's not normal for you. Like, right? Your body's pushing out toxins or whatever. So there is a root cause of like why your skin would break out. Like, anxiety is not what you're programmed to have. You experience sometimes is normal, but emotional, mental pain, anxiety, PTSD, that's not your normal operating system. So it tells you there's something wrong there, right? And so that's kind of the baseline where you have to start. And where I had to kind of get when I was finally like looked around and be like, you know what, this is not normal behavior. I got around people that were more stable than me, and I'm like, why am I so freaking anxious all the time? And why am I always on edge? And why am I acting weird? For no reason. I get these little panicky things. And that's funny, because a lot of people are surprised that I actually still have struggle with anxiety a bit, because I tend to do a lot of things that make other people anxious. But it's funny that what triggers me is not what would trigger somebody else. It's usually when there's various reasons why I get anxious, but
all those dangerous things make you feel less anxious.
yeah, but actually speed, beyond the edge control, like big movements, lots of violence around me.
That makes me very anxious.
That makes her very anxious. I feel comfortable there. It kind of matches the frequency of that internal, whatever you want to call it, storm, I guess. But so let's talk about some things. And the reason why I'm going to run down this list, that I hope it like trips some triggers for some people, and I can be like, oh, okay, I can see where that might be the case in my life. And then depending where we're at, we'll just wrap it up next week, because we're kind of running out of time here. But firstly, if we're constantly anxious, there can be environmental factors. Like, I like to go down the list from really practical and easy to diagnose to like the more difficult. And so like environmental factors that could cause you anxiety are like your living situation, your geographic situation, your work and your relationships, EMFs, electromagnetic frequency emitted by electronic devices, plugins, wiring in houses can cause anxiety. I know this for a fact. I discovered this in myself as a very practical thing that helped me out greatly. It was actually come through watching a paranormal show, believe it or not. I happened to be watching, and they were discussing on this show that some people feel like they're being watched or having a visitation if they are sensitive to electromagnetic frequency and they have a leak in their house. And so they had this EMF detector, which any electrician can buy. They're not very expensive. And they were testing electrical outlets in the house in this basement where they could see that it was leaking a lot of EMFs. And I'm like, well, that's pretty interesting. I wonder if that's happening to me, because I was having, for like a month, I couldn't sleep at all. Like, I was having anxiety at night, flipping around in bed, feeling really crazy, wondering if I was losing it. Didn't know what was going on. Thought, oh, maybe this is spiritual. Something's going on. And then I watched the show, and like this, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to buy an EMF detector to see if it's actually causing me anxiety.
You get anything on
or like something in the room. I'm picking up something in the room, right? I was very interested. Anna might pick up a ghost here. Apparently, they shift the environment electromagnetically. Don't do that. But don't judge me. So interestingly enough, I'm going around reading all the outlets in my house, and right behind my bed, my head where I slept at night, I had plugged in a new alarm clock that had one of those little transformer things, those little black cubes in the wall, and it was like off the charts, like putting off super high EMFs. I unplugged that thing, and literally I just slept like a baby that night. It's like, oh, very practical reason I was experiencing extreme anxiety. It was just EMF leaking in my home. So that is one possibility. And that's an easy one when it comes to stuff like that. If it's your living situation, you could be in an area that's just got a lot going on, and it's just a stressful place to live, and it can cause you anxiety. Cell signals can cause you anxiety. Electronics, like I said, you need to kind of go through the list if you're really serious about it. Like, what's my environment like? Is it electromagnetic leaks? Is it cell signals? Is it technology? Am I staring at my computer all night, and the blue light's affecting me cognitively? I did an experiment where I turned off my router, and we have a little mini cell tower in our house at night to see if I would sleep better. And I hands down, I dream really clearly when I turn those things off in my house. Like if I shut them off for a week and I slept great, I could dream really clear. Turn them back on, I didn't dream as clear. Shut them back off. I did it for a while to see if it was really a thing. And so all those things can affect you. You know, relationships can affect you if you are in a high demand relationship, someone who's really critical, all those things. So geographically, like where are you living? Some people are really sensitive to the land, and that can cause anxiety. Like you really have to kind of go through the list when it comes to the environmental things. It's takes some work. And that could sound a little bit frustrating, like, well, how am I going to unsolve that problem? You know, how am I going to solve that problem or open up that can of worms? And so I want to go back to reminding everybody that you have someone who knows everything that will speak to you. Holy Spirit knows everything, searches everything, knows the depths and widths and all of that, knows the very thoughts of God, right? Is the Spirit of God that will speak to you if you ask. Like that's the Holy Spirit's MO. Like I'm here to teach you. And that takes some trust. Again, trust. You have to believe and trust. If you ask, lead me down this path so I can come to a place of health, because that's what God always does. He takes us from here and always brings us up here. It's a never-ending cycle of taking us higher and higher. That you got to trust that you're going to be led down the path to get well. So that's environmental. Even entertainment. Like, what are you watching on TV? Like, what are you filling your head with? Are you watching a ton of horror movies? Are you reading it? I love Stephen King as a writer. I was just reading a ton of Stephen King books for a while. And it was funny because literally one night I was in Hawaii. I was reading 3 of his books at a time. I don't know. I thought it was funny to be in paradise and then read something really dark. Because everyone was reading, and I'm like, I'm just going to read Stephen King because I like the irony.
The juxtaposition.
Juxtaposition of paradise and these terrible stories. And I'm literally like, it's starting to affect me. And like one night, like the Holy Spirit told me, like, I want you to stop reading this. You need to take a break. They're making you dark. They're making you anxious. I'm like, oh, okay. And I took a break, and it was like, ooh, I felt a lot better. Like that was too much a diet of Stephen King. Again, don't judge me. That was a long time ago. So entertainment, you know, if you're watching a lot of stuff that's feeding you the ideas that like things are going to be terrible and everything's going to turn towards the worst in zombie movies and horror movies, and there's something scary behind every corner, it's going to wire your brain to like expect, you know, something jump behind the corner and eat your brains. So,
Ew.
Yeah.
What? Park and Rec, I tell you guys.
Yeah, do that. Okay, so I beat that horse to death. Don't beat horses. Okay, so then we come to like physical, like another practical step into the journey of getting rid of anxiety in your life is your physical being, like diet, biology, lifestyle. If your diet sucks, like it will mess with your hormones, which messes with your neurotransmitters, which messes with your gut biome, which messes with your personality. I mean, it all affects each other. If you're living off of Twinkies and ice cream and French fries, not eating any holistic, you know, like real food, that would be things that grow. That's what food.
Just saying.
Grow in the natural state.
Corn and wheat.
Veggies.
And
Animals.
Corn syrup.
Not corn syrup. That's not real. But it actually affects your biology. And that can cause your neurotransmitters to whack out in your hormones, which will cause anxiety. Been there. Crashed my body, overtraining it 4 or 5 years ago. And my neurotransmitters flatlined, and it affected me in so many ways. It wasn't even funny. Biology, you know, if your parents are prone to anxiety, like my family is actually prone to anxiety and depression, pretty good chance you're going to have issues with that as well, which I do. Anxiety and depression, struggled with those my whole life. I know how to manage them. And that takes some effort to figure out as well. You know, it's like you got to take a hard look at your lifestyle. You're like, am I exercising? Or am I just sitting in the house, watch TV, tuning out, playing on the computer, not doing anything real, you know, virtual life? You weren't meant for that. Like your body's meant to struggle physically, run, move, breathe air, sunshine, interact, touch nature, all those things we were literally designed to do. If you're not touching nature, it's actually making you sick. Like And some people are like, I hate nature. I just want to stay inside. Someone told me the other day, I just want to stay inside and watch TV. And like, good luck with that. You weren't designed for that. It literally will make you ill, and can make you anxious. Neurotransmitters are a big deal. Like, so you could actually go like to a naturopath or doctor and get your neurotransmitters and hormones diagnosed to see where they're at, and that could be actually the source of your anxiety. Mental.
Kim says the news.
The news, yeah, totally. So then it takes me to mental, and these are like moving up in degrees of complexity. And we're almost out of time, so we're going to cap it off the mental thing and then talk about spiritual next week. But, you know, so mentally, beliefs, traumas, nature, or there's kind of a nature and nurture thing. If you were nurtured, not nurtured, or like, you know, mentally abused, psychologically abused as a kid, you experience trauma in your life. All these things can like wire your brain to like get stuck in fight or flight mode, which is your primitive reflex. Your parasympathetic nervous system kicks in and stays kicked in. And that can cause permanent anxiety. Like you get triggered by things related to your trauma, and then all of a sudden you're just like, whoop, triggered. And you kind of stay there. And that's difficult. You actually have to seek out you have to make a decision, like I don't want to live here, and seek out some counseling. EMDR is really good to help that.
Can you say what that is?
EMDR.
If you know.
I can't even know what EMDR stands for. I'll tell you next week. EMDR counselor, someone who specializes in PTSD, can actually help change that, rewire that part of your brain. Like neuroplasticity is a thing. Like you can actually change that literal thought in your brain, because thoughts are actual physical things, and you can literally reshape them in your mind.
Like little brain trees.
Like little brain trees. So I'm gonna leave right there because I'm running out of time. But next week we'll talk about spiritual sources of anxiety, and particularly centered around being spiritually gifted, spiritually sensitive person. How you really need to learn to manage that, or you're just gonna be a wreck all the time, because you are really like a receiver, and if you cannot differentiate what's coming to you from your own person, you are going to be a wreck the rest of your life. So I was literally talking to someone a couple days ago, and she was like, she can tell when people are thinking about her. She's a tattoo artist, so she's constantly like interacting with people, like her art's on their skin. They're really invested in her, and she's invested in them for a moment. How she can feel people. She doesn't disconnect from them. It makes her crazy and anxious. And so it's a real thing. We'll discuss that next time.
Julie looked up what EMDR is.
Eye movement desensitization and reprocessing.
I don't know why you didn't have that memorized.
I didn't have eye movement desensitized in there. I wasn't quite, I never remember the R. Thank you, Julie. That was very helpful.
Thanks for Googling.
Yeah. So hopefully those give you guys a place to start. If you're experiencing anxiety right now, it's just a given. Like there's a ton of anxiety in the air. Like there's a tons of reasons to be anxious right now. It's not a place you want to get stuck. It's telling you something's wrong, and we need to then, like me personally, with all the stuff flying around, I get anxious almost every day. Something triggers my anxiety, but I have to be like, all right, I'm going to capture that thought. This is what it feels like. I can separate that feeling from myself over here. I still feel it. I'm going to punch my wife with it.
Don't punch.
I can still feel it. It's not like it's gone away, but like, what am I going to do with it? And like, here's the anxiety. Like, it's an existing thing. I am feeling anxious. Is it mine? I could be collectively feeling everyone's anxiety. It could be actually something that's triggering something from the past. It could be like I drank like 4 cups of coffee today, which does give me anxiety. It's funny because I'm like, I'm just going to deal with this. Because I'll be like, sometimes I'll get like a really dark roast, and I'm like, I love coffee. So I'm like, this is going to give me anxiety, but I'm just going to deal with it. It's not healthy. You shouldn't do that. It's my one vice. Come on. So you got to like separate it and look at it. Like, where is this coming from? You know, it's trying to tell me something, and what do I need to do about it? And so that then puts you down the path of discovery, because you don't want to live with that. It'll wreck your body in the end. It just, you know, it kind of kills you slowly. It's not something you just want to become okay with and live with. It's not normal. You weren't wired for it. You're wired for love. You're wired for peace. You're wired to function wholly and fully. And so my baseline comes from Scripture. And it says, God says to people, I have not given you a spirit of fear, but of peace and a sound mind. So, if you don't have peace and a sound mind, that didn't come from God, because that's really his will for all of humanity, his children that he created us to be in his image, to be like him. And he's not anxious about anything. So take that with you today. Next week, we'll talk more about the spiritual side of it, centered around the spiritual gifts, particularly the spirit or the gift of discerning of spirits, or the empathic gift, or clairsentience. It's all related. Some people don't like to cross those words, but I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. It's all very valid. And will help, hopefully, people that struggle there to get that under control. And I'll teach you kind of ways that I have learned, because that's my biggest source of anxiety, is usually comes from what I'm picking up in the spirit. And so I will share my journey of getting that under control. And if you got any questions, leave them in the comments.
I think Jill has a good comment.
Oh.
And Jill, I was thinking about you. I'm so glad your house is okay. The fire's down there. And you have a lot of reason for anxiety. I'm glad you're okay.
So Jill, yeah, I mean, that's all stuff that's going on right now, right? And so what Jill said is she's having the same dreams, that she's running from groups of violent people and trying to avoid natural disasters. I'm processing my anxiety in the dreams. Yes.
Sure, that totally happens.
I experience this every time I go into a big city. Like I drove through Salem yesterday, going to the beach to go surfing, or last week, sorry. And it never fails when I get in a really populated area. I start thinking about defending myself. If like a gang of protesters comes after me, or some crazy Antifa, or like whoever, the Proud Boys, I don't even know. Like, everyone's after everybody. It seems, it's not true, but it's in the back of everybody's mind. There's like tons of people like taking defense classes and buying guns right now. I'm like, great, that's what we need. A bunch of anxious people with trigger fingers that can heart punch you. And so I almost every time I go into a populated area, I feel that like, if this happens, I'm going to do this. I'm starting to process like other people's anxiety. But if we're taking in the news every day on Facebook, which I don't even do anymore, like I don't read Facebook feed at all, because it's just that it's like it sticks to you, and then it stays in there, and then you reprocess it later. And the same way with me visually, whatever I look at visually, it just kind of plays back for me later. And if I'm like downloading a bunch of images and sounds and news and stuff, it's gonna like, especially if I don't have time to really like digest it, it's just gonna regurgitate later. And sometimes that does happen in my dreams. And so if it makes you feel better, I've had funny countries that would never invade the U.S., and it's always kind of comical, but it's like,
Who's invading? I'm curious.
I think England was invading us last time, which.
Well, I mean, was that after we watched Hamilton?
No.
Oh.
But I've had those kind of dreams in the past when things get squirrely in the world, and I'm like, like Canada's gonna come and invade the U.S. and make us all drink maple syrup. Say a boot, but
do like a boot process
and be nice. Anyway, so yes, processing it sucks. It's there, but you know what? So what I do then, this is gonna go a little long, but since we started late. 5 minutes late. I got 2 more minutes. I flip it, so I shift the atmosphere. So if I'm feeling that in an atmosphere, I wake up, or if I'm driving through the city, I start speaking the opposite, right? Because we represent the kingdom of heaven, right? We should be ambassadors for love and truth, and we've got the Holy Spirit available to us to tell us how to pray, what to say, the opposite of what's God saying about the city. So we know He wants everyone to succeed. We know He wants everyone to be loved. God's heart's for redemption. That's what He's doing. It's for forgiveness. It's for restoration. It's for peace. And so I'm like, all right, this is what I'm feeling in the atmosphere. I'm feeling like fear, and I'm feeling like, violence, and I'm feeling this and that. And so I just start speaking the opposite over the city, shifting the atmosphere. And it's kind of a game I play a lot, actually. I was going to talk about that next week, but I will say the opposite of what's coming at me. So if it's like a fear, if it's a dream, I wake up and it's saying this, I'm like, well, that's obviously not God's plan for humanity. We know what His plan is because we've got the book, right? And so I'll just say what God says about humanity and flip it, And so that's part of taking a thought captive. and not letting it like become a little tree in your brain that bears fruit. You know, you just like cut it off quick before it gets there, and then you replace it with something inspired from the Spirit instead of the darkness. Anything else there?
Nailed it.
Nailed it. No, okay. So next week I will talk specifically about managing anxiety when it comes to picking up information in the Spirit. I just talked about it a little bit, and how to get control of that and use it to your advantage instead of being ruled by it. So
Jill, she says she's a flip artist. She's a 7. Yes.
I like it. Use that power.
Yes,
Yeah,
7s are pro reframers.
awesome.
You had threatened to do prophecy. I don't know.
Well, we're out of time tonight,
Okay.
so sorry guys.
Next
That's probably
week,
words tonight. So yeah, thanks for tuning in. Love you guys. See you next
Have
week.
a good week.
And be well.
Take care.
Be blessed.